Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
And welcome in, everyone, to another edition of the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. I'm Joe Kraus. Of course, my partner, JDoc, with me, riding shotgun, and another good show, JDoc. I seem sometimes to be repetitive when I say that, but the sequence of shows over the last couple of weeks have been phenomenal in terms of the topic, the conversation, and also the activity on the number of shows that are actually being downloaded via our podcast on Apple and Spotify. So you're putting out great information. Today will be no different, sir.
Thanks, Krausey. Today is going to be a great show. It's kind of a hybrid show. We have Shawn Steffee, who's no stranger to the broadcast. Shawn's one of the most high-profile labor leaders across the country when it comes to the issues of labor and energy, of course. Shawn, as everybody knows, is the business agent of Boilermakers Local 154. He's also the president of the South Central Building Trades here in PA. And we're going to be following up on getting updates on the Homer City project, data centers, other upcoming projects that are on the table in PA. And of course, very interesting discussion about, town hall meetings, and the building trades are getting accused of bullying people. And in regards to their opinions and overriding, the local town hall meetings. But so I can't wait to talk about that because I have some great, opinions on that. And of course, I know Shawn does. And also, we're going to talk a little election if we get time. But also the second part of the show, Bill Brown, who's the CEO of Citadel Credit Union. We're talking financial literacy and union members, and we're actually going to have Bill and Shawn on the same segment. And as you know, Bill, and Citadel has made a commitment to our labor community, and they have a labor history. So it's going to be an awesome show. Certainly looking forward to it, Joe.
Yeah, as it scrolls across the bottom, I just want to remind everyone, if you're perhaps tuning into the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey for the very first time, you can go to Apple or Spotify, wherever your preferred source for your podcast, search the word labor and energy, and you'll get the updated program, and you'll also get a catalog or a library of our previous shows, all of that on Apple and Spotify. We will get to a 30-second break. When we come back on the other side, the Labor and Energy Show gets started. JDoc and Shawn Steffee, we're back in 30.
At Citadel Credit Union, we're all in on growth. Growing our community, growing your financial future, growing what's possible. That's why we created Ultimate Growth Checking, a premium checking account that lets you make smart money moves without lifting a finger. Does your current checking account do that? This one does. See how you could earn a special bonus and get growing at citadelbanking.com/growradio. Citadel, a Newsweek Best Regional Bank and Credit Union. Federally insured by NCUA.
Welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show here on the Jacob Media Network. I'm ecstatic to bring in my great friend and our guest for today, Shawn Steffee. How are you, Shawn?
Doing good, JDoc. Glad to see you, buddy.
Always a pleasure. Certainly a lot going on, and I'm reading the headlines here. In a PR battle for AI data centers, tech giants got a blue-collar ally, okay? But some people, think that we're bullying the locals when it comes to the community meetings. And I get a kick out of that only in the fact that I don't know if anybody's ever been to a job meeting or, a project meeting and the far left environmentalists come in. I don't know if you could even compare the two, but I'm glad they brought up bullying when it comes to those things. So we got a lot to talk about. We're going to get to that. But first, because data centers is a big part of what we're talking about. What's going on in your world, my friend?
It's like drinking from a fire hose right now, JDoc. It's just the work that is potentially coming and is in the queue, and the work that's in process. So let's just skip right to it. Homer City project, largest natural gas plant in North America, right in Indiana County, right in my building trades. 1,200 construction building trades, men and women on that job site right now. And in a 14-month period, the building trades labor has demoed 3 units and cleared that site, and we're getting ready to start the above ground here towards the end of May, beginning of June on the first unit 1. And things are going great. Manpower is there. And let's just put that into perspective a little bit, JDoc, and I think this is kind of funny. So on the other side of the road from the Kiewit project at Homer City, 4 years ago, they started a renewable project called an anabolic digester, Commodore, turn it to methane. That project's sitting half done, out of money. I don't know what happened there. Was used out-of-state workers. Now they're building a campground in the shadow of that anabolic digester to house people to build that facility that we're building, that new power plant project and data centers. I think it's kind of, comical, but I'm all on board. The Boilermakers are on board. The data centers are coming. The power plants are coming. Natural gas, it's all on board right now. And, I think it's kind of funny looking back how long, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, JDoc, we're doing a radio show, saying that we're done. Nobody needs like a Boilermaker skill set no more. Fossil fuels are done. And here we are now. We're all of us. We got so much work. We got to accept the challenge, bring in new members. We need to train future blue collar men and women in all the trades. It's booming. It's a great thing. It's going to be a challenge, but I think every one of us in Pennsylvania, both east and west and the center, is ready to take that challenge and put their men and women to work and grow our unions.
Yeah, and so when we talk about our data centers, and by the way, we're having, a lot of our broadcasts are a big part of it. It's amazing, 100%. How AI and our data centers have electrified our industry, okay, and in a lot of ways have brought some rationale back when it comes to the environmental discussion, which we all care about. No, there's no bigger environmentalist than you. You spend your days hunting and fishing, okay, when you have a day. Let's also talk, when we talk about the Homer City project, how that's going to revitalize. Okay, right now, a ton of jobs, crushing it. It's going to bring, obviously, AI resources across the region, but also once that project gets finished, it revitalizes the community with not only you talk about tax revenues, but jobs and the surrounding community. We talk about the magnitude of a project like that, Shawn.
So the magnitude of a project like that is one. It's going to come in, like you said, revitalize the area, the school district, okay? I can speak to this because I'm, born and raised in Indiana County, Homer City all my life. Okay, I graduated from Homer Center High School in 1985. I had 166 kids in my graduating class. My son graduated in 2013 with 56 total kids in the graduating class. This is what we got to do. This is what we got to build. We want to bring people into your, these small towns, revitalize the school, put people in the houses, put kids in the school district, families. These are all family sustaining jobs. And when we're done building this, the maintenance is going to give back. This is going to be return maintenance job for us in the building trades. There's going to be ripple effect jobs, to run that facility. You think you're going to have 7 units and hyperscale data centers up there and nobody's going to work here? There's going to be people at work here. And that opens the door up for the new, new manufacturing jobs that could come with part of that in, maybe robotics, whatever we got to do in this new era of AI and data centers and robotics. Okay. It comes down to this. every one of them need reliable baseload electricity, okay, to build out robotics, to build out AI, to build data centers, to build everything in the future. The manufacturing needs this kind of electricity generation, and this is what it does. It brings jobs. And I can't think of a better place to build it on an old industrial site like a coal-fired plant. It's a brownfield site, and we got a bunch of them, and we can build them out. And my point is, so why, go I'll take like the Claremont Solar Farm in McKean County, 800 acres. They just cleared that mountaintop off to sell power to New York and cut 200-year-old trees down, leveled it. Okay, that's not a good environment move, if you ask me. Let's go to these places that are already an old industrial site. Let's build. They got the infrastructure there, and let's put men and women to work, and let's revitalize these communities, these old coal communities and places that lost manufacturing and jobs, and let's revitalize these towns. And I think this is a great way.
And what are we sensing in regards to? I came up just recently with a kind of like a saying, right? Because these projects are such, and our country, right, in Pennsylvania, our standards, our environmental standards are higher than anywhere on the planet, right? When it comes to
Yep,
that's a fact. Okay, and I hear about projects, like these, and I get so excited, and I love the strategy. Okay, and your statement alone shows how much we care about the environment, right? And so when I think about it, these, and thank God the AI's on the table, and it's where the world is going. And by the way, the world is going to adapt. Okay, like. When the car came in, the horse and buggy had to step aside, but we figured it out, right? Having said that, you hear all kinds of craziness now on Facebook about and on social media about what's going on, what AI is going to do, and all that. And by the way, it's going to do a lot of things. One of those things is cure cancer and Lou Gehrig's disease and all those things. And so there's going to be some incredible advancements. Like history has showed us, the last 200 years has been, if you look at a billion-year planet, this is just an incredible time to be here, and we're right in the middle of it. I sit here and I say to myself, when far-left environmentalists try to stop projects, the only thing, and it's an obvious thing because we care about the world environment. We all live on the same planet. All they do is try to stop supply. The demand doesn't leave. So what do we end up doing? Going overseas where the standards aren't as high and we all live on the same planet. A discussion over. Okay. So when I hear about these projects, I'm so excited. Shawn, talk about other projects that are obviously on the horizon, kicking off and underway, that are so important to our state.
Sure. So I'm going to speak on behalf of like Southwestern PA, but we got a lot going in the eastern part too. You got the 3 Mile Island project going right now, and there's some other potential power build out and data centers, in the middle of the state, Wilkes-Barre out east. But just here in Southwestern PA. So we got on the cusp. We got the Bruce Mansfield project, the old former coal plant in Beaver County that wants to do a project changing over to gas, building a new gas plant, and putting data centers there to the tune of billions of dollars. You got the Project Hummingbird and 2 units in Greene County, right on the old Consol Energy property. Power plant, 2 Herzics, 1,100 megawatts, and data centers. You got potential at the Tech Fusions in the old Alcoa site in Westmoreland County, multi-billion-dollar job. You got the revitalization of the U.S. Steel with Nippon here, wanting to make investment of I think up to $12 billion. You have other projects. You got the Cheswick that wants to put data centers and upgrade Springdale for the power. There's so many jobs that are coming, and then the Mon South that they haven't disclosed the exact location. It's supposed to be in southwestern PA around Washington County, $17.6 billion. Okay. We're talking billions and billions of dollars in investment in building out power. And not to mention now our coal fires are going to stay open because the grid needs them, and they're going to make an investment in that. And that's building trades work right there. So, this is a really good time right now to be a blue collar man or woman in the building trades, working local, working labor, working union.
And what I love about your strategy, you talk about, we have a lot of locations, okay, that where there are old facilities where we don't have to do what you talked about, where we take out hundreds of acres of
forest,
right,
yep, mountaintops, yep.
Sean, talk about obviously new technology coming in, but our labor community and especially the Boilermakers and all of our pipe trades. You guys are training the apprentices and journeymen to be as prepared for the new technology and to be ready. Let's talk about the benefit of doing these jobs union. You just mentioned a project that's, it started way before the Homer City project. It's still fluttering, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about the benefits of building them union with our man and women power, our education, and our unlimited workforce.
So, hey, JDoc, I'm not going to sit here and, lie. It's going to be a challenge to come up with these numbers here in Southwestern PA and PA to build out what they want to build. But if there's anybody that can step up to the challenge and build this, it's the building trades. The Boilermakers, we accept this challenge. We're ready. We're recruiting right now. We're recruiting. We're taking young men and women. We're going to Votex. We're going to community colleges. We're going to school districts. We're like, here, I'm not offering you a one-time job at Homer City. I'm offering you a career, okay? A great family-sustaining job with health care benefits, with a pension, with an annuity, and something you can be a part of and be proud of, something that can never be taken away from you in an apprenticeship. That when you could go anywhere within the country and go to work if you wanted to, and it's booming all over the country. Of course, we want them right here in PA. I want my guys working right here. I want them packing lunch boxes, not suitcases, okay? I want to give them the work. I want to build my local back. And, it's on the cusp of happening right now. Everybody's excited about it. And the labor, we're proven. We've already proven ourselves here in PA. We've built this infrastructure one time already, okay, through the years. And, we're ready to build it again and bring in new young women and men and women. And it starts with our educators, too. For how long it wasn't, nobody wanted to promote going and getting a blue-collar job or being in a trade union or working with your hands. It was like, get a 4-year degree, get a sheepskin from that university. Now where are we at? I got young men and women making good money,
right?
Doing blue-collar work.
What's interesting about that, Sean? I do something called Sparking the Dream Show. So we have the kids from the public schools in Philly, and either the building trades people or other professionals. And at the forefront of that conversation, okay, is first of all, at least in Philadelphia, I can tell you, the school district, a lot. You never hear these stories. But and by the way, Bill Brown has spoken. He's done several financial literacy shows on our upcoming guest with the students. The programs they have in the school district range from accounting to your business to building trades classes all the way through. Even educational institutions, and the mindset of education today is that different young people they are geared towards different types of education. Some are focused on the arts, okay, and not a business education. Many are focused on building trade skills, and so that's what's so awesome about this. And one of the great things you talk about, the things that you're doing and preparing for the future, is earn while you learn, right? In other words, how much is it going to cost my son to go to the Boilermakers apprentice school where you get college credits and a 3-year education, 4 years, and you get to go to work right away. What's that cost out of pocket to the students?
Not one single penny, JDoc. And you know what? Here's another thing I'd like to add on to that. Every one of us in the trades have state-of-the-art training facilities. I'll tell you, for example, we just visited, my business manager went to the Kiewit job site. They loaded up over almost $500,000 in new machines and consumables, sent it to our hall and said, here's the machines you're going to be welding with on this job. Train your men and women on there. Here's the consumables. You can weld anything you want here. We'll teach you. Our instructors are great. They're all, 25, 30-year journeymen that's been in the field that are training. There are welding instructors in the classroom, learning rigging, EPRI. These are things that can never be taken away from you. And like you said, not only we put you and train you for nothing, but while you're training, when we have the opportunities, we're going to put you on a job site. You're going to earn money. You're going to pay into a pension. You're going to pay into annuity. And that goes for all of us in the building trades. It's a win-win. I don't see how that nobody you can deny that that's not a winning situation.
Well, it is. And the beauty of it is, the reality of it is, education today has changed. Man,
Yes.
I'll tell you, you come to Philly one day and you do one. I'm going to have you, of all people, do one of these Sparking the Dream programs. I can tell you this. It's just a broadcast where you have the students on one side talking about their dreams and the professionals on the other talking about the pathway to success. But our first one was with pipe fitters, okay, machinists. And I'm telling, and the student was in the machine class. So listen, the society, community, obviously municipalities, they know it, they get it. And if you're lucky enough to get one of these apprentices outside of, when you get out of school, when you're ready, you will never have any debt. So let's talk. And when it comes to these big projects, project labor agreements, we have opportunity to ensure that these projects get done and on time without labor shortages. Touch on that before we talk about some of these community meetings that we're getting blasted for.
So it kind of runs hand in hand to what you're talking about there. But, labor has, we have now, we're working in tandem with energy producers. We're working in tandem with tech, that wants to build out this data and this advanced manufacturing. And, we're all working together to come to the same goal. And, they want our help. And that's one of the things, like, hey, we'll get with you, but we're going to sign a PLA or an NCA agreement or a construction agreement, because we're not going to go to bat for you. And we're not going to get all of our members to get on board and do everything. And then you turn around and pull out of state and do it non-union. It's going to be like, hey, I'll scratch your back, you scratch my back. And it's working. We're all together. And it's, and when you work together, better things happen. And that's what's kind of happening right now.
No question. We're putting our money where our mouth is. So before we go to break, okay, and bring on our next guest, let's talk about this article, okay?
Yeah.
What the hell is going on here? What's going on, Shawn?
I'll speak to it, because I think they're talking about the one town hall meeting that my building trades went to for the Homer City project there, Senator Muth. So, hey, we're tired of hearing, we haven't been transparent enough, in my opinion, in past as building trades. We did our own thing, okay? But now we're coming out because all we hear is all these projects are going to be out-of-state workers, and this is not going to be good for the community. And so in Homer City, I brought the guys out. I'm the president. I said, hey, listen, we got to show up here. We got to show them that we live in the community. We're your neighbors. Our kids are in your school districts. We're your football coaches. And not only did they show up in high numbers, but then all of us in the building trades put booths out in the front of that lobby and offered a career, offered apprenticeship. We offered jobs and careers, and we went in there and we showed our numbers. Hey, I live right here. I'm not from out of state. I'm going to work here. Who do you think's been taking care of all this infrastructure around these counties and Pennsylvania? It wasn't out of staters. It's been us. We've been here the whole time. And we didn't bully anybody. We just showed up. Now, you want to talk about bullying? Ask the environmentalists that showed up there. They're not from the state, okay, most of them, okay? And what are they there to offer, okay? If they don't want to build this up, what do they want to build? They shut these projects down, they do a victory lap, and they leave, and they never come back to the towns that we live in, okay? Yep. We're here. We're showing them we live in your towns. We are your neighbors. We are your community, and we're here, and we want that work, and we want to continue to work here and stay here, and it's catching on. It's not bullying. It's just coming out and showing this is where we live.
Well, that was my point at the beginning. When you have, so everybody's got a right to protest. I'm not real sure, that conversation when you talk about the environmentalists coming from out of community. That's what happened here in Philly with the PES refinery. Okay, those people came in and were not from our area and bombarded our area, just with constant, protests and all that stuff. Well, with labor, we got some numbers, and there's another point of view. Okay, and when it comes, and I imagine, all of our members care about the environment as well. So it's a three-dimensional situation, not just one-dimensional. And so there's another opinion, and then you have the folks in the audience. By the way, how did that go when it came to our members showing up and the environmentalists? I'm assuming they weren't expecting. They were ready to run roughshod like they always do. Okay, what does that picture look like?
That picture looks like then they don't say nothing because there's nobody there to they don't want to push back on. And we weren't like obnoxious or nothing. We just showed our numbers, okay, yeah. And showed, hey, this is where I live and I'm here and I want these jobs. And we filled the room, okay. They had to shut the attendance off at the Homer City town hall meeting and couldn't let anybody else in. Every one of the building trades represented themselves with their local members that lived there and came to that. And that's what's going on right now. We're all showing up. We're showing our faces. We're doing exactly what the protesters did. And we're doing it on a positive note. And we're offering careers. We're offering, jobs, and we're coming in and explaining like that's not quite true what they're saying. And we do live here. Our kids live here. Our grandkids live here. Our parents live here. And just like you said, we all want clean air. We all want clean water, but we feel like we can do both. We can have the jobs and we can have a nice environment, and it's possible. And that's our message. And we're ready to take the challenge and build out and build our communities back up that have suffered so long with the lack of jobs and the manufacturing leaving and the power industry that was leaving, because this is back. And whether anybody likes it or not, the genie's out of the bottle on electricity generation for grid reliability and AI data centers, and they're going to build it somewhere. And if they don't want to build it in their county or their community, it's going to get built somewhere else. The building trades are going to build it, and we're still taking men and women. Even if you don't build it in your county, I'll take your men and women and out of your schools, and I'll try to put them to work.
Right, and what's the alternative here? Again, overseas, I get it. It's not as convenient to. I don't think you can. I think just with the technology alone, in order to do a data center, it's got to be in your community. But they'll figure a way. If the environmentalists, and like I said, to an extent, we're all environmentalists. But I love the mobilization. Okay, we need to be mobilizing. Okay, as a labor community and standing up to these irrational situations. This is not complicated. Okay, no. In other words, we either do it or somebody else does it, or it goes overseas. It gets done. Okay, yes. And yet, like I said, you're just shutting down supply. Demand does not stop, especially now. Shawn, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. Okay, then we're going to talk a little financial literacy and union members. We get the opportunity to make all this money, thank God. Okay, and this is an awesome conversation, Shawn, because you and I were talking a few years ago, like the end of the world was coming, and to say we got a reprieve and technology, and the world has changed, and we're right in the thick of it. So it's awesome. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to have more from Labor and Energy Show in just a minute.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show on the JDoc Media Network. Awesome show, fantastic, great discussion with Shawn Steffee, business manager, Boilermakers Local 154, and the president of South Central Building Trades in Pennsylvania. Now we get the opportunity to bring in Bill Brown, president, CEO of Citadel Credit Union, who's done a lot of great work with our labor community. Just to name a few, the sheet metal workers, Local 19 here in Philly, Philadelphia Building Trades right here in Philadelphia. And Bill Brown, I want you to meet Shawn Steffee, one of our great labor leaders, not only in Pennsylvania, but across the country. It's great to acquaint the two of you.
Hey, Shawn. Pleasure to meet you as well. And JDoc, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with you and Shawn.
It's great to have you, Bill. And I was telling Shawn, we were talking about our apprentices and the education and all that. And you have had the opportunity to sit down with a lot of the students, when it comes to the different programs that are going on with the school district. And we did it on a financial literacy kind of level. But what's going on in our public schools in the city of Philadelphia, you won't hear on mainstream media. But that's another discussion. But this is a discussion when it comes to, listen, we have the world has changed for us, Bill. Shawn represents the Boilermakers Union, and he's a mouthpiece nationally for them. And so having said that, we get with all these data centers coming in, okay, and the technology across the planet changing. The Boilermakers are right in the thick of that. So are the ironworkers and all the building trades, okay? So you heard us when you talk about educating in our apprentice programs, all kinds of new technologies and all those things so they can meet the new projects. When they make that money and that's coming out, financial literacy is something that, and labor is something you've talked about. And you have Citadel has a labor background. First, if you will, just take about a couple minutes to tell Shawn and our listeners, remind them a little bit about Citadel and your labor background. And then let's get right into this discussion.
Yeah, thanks for that, JDoc. Yeah, Citadel is headquartered out in Exton, PA, and we cover the entire state of Pennsylvania. We serve about 290,000 members across Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey at this point. And you're right, we are born from Coatesville. We are the legacy credit union of Lucan Steel Mill. And so this idea of industry, manufacturing, the unions, the trades, that's near and dear to our heart because that's where we come from. And those are the kinds of members. Those are the kinds of members. Remember, I said members, not clients, customers, members, because they're owners. Those are the people we want to serve because they need someone on their side when it comes to their finances.
And Shawn, okay. And so having said that, let's open up this financial literacy discussion. When you talk about unions, okay, obviously unions do great things for their members, represent the American dream. It's a career, not a job. Retirement savings plans. We have annuities, vacation funds, high wages, retirement pension, all those things. And then you look at the categories of our members: apprentices, young union members, rank and file members, injured workers, retirees, okay, members with kids in college, okay, and married couples, okay. So we cover the gamut, and we'd like to talk to us about where we begin here with financial literacy in our community.
Yeah, look, I'll build off of where you guys closed out the last segment with Shawn. You know, these opportunities across the state, across the nation, are presenting themselves. In this case, we talked a little bit about data centers and energy, and those create great jobs. They create labor jobs. They create union jobs that are really good jobs, and they provide a career path for so many, as Shawn said, so many of our young men and women out there who are looking for those kinds of opportunities. But just getting that opportunity doesn't make you financially literate. And that's where we partner with you, JDoc. That's where we partner with organized labor, because financial literacy, financial education starts early in life, and it's a lifelong event. And it's classroom by classroom. It's apprentice orientation by apprentice orientation to help these young people understand, what does that roadmap look like? What does financial success look like for them? And that's why we're so delighted to be in business with a lot of organized labor.
And so when we talk about, I can say, you know, I remember as a young iron worker, I had the opportunity to take my annuity out and buy a house and keep doing it. But I don't think I ever looked at the big picture. You're looking at a lot of things. Shawn, obviously you represent a lot of members, and one of the things that we didn't have in high school back in my day was we didn't have this home economics big picture discussion. Okay, and you know, building trades money that's why we call it a career, not a job. And so it's not, you know, for one reason or another, as much as, you know, we always like to make sure our young apprentices understand they weren't born on third base. I spent years into that package. But I'll ask Shawn, what issues sometimes do you see from young members? You know, like, in other words, who just they don't know what to do with all that money. And all of a sudden,
I can get right on that. They have issues with that. And so for me, like my local, we have a health and welfare committee and somebody that runs that, you know, and, you know, that works with somebody like Bill. But this even goes for our older ones. And let's just talk about the job like a Homer City job. So boom, you got 3 years of steady work. You're knocking down a coin, and you go buy that brand new truck. You go buy that brand new house. You go buy this, and all of a sudden that job's over, and you got a little law, and you've got yourself in over your head. It happens all the time. We try to tell our young guys, hey, live within your means. Save your money. Don't touch your annuity. But they go back because they don't understand, and sometimes it's a hard lesson for them to learn, and then they got to dip into the annuity they just saved to bail them out. You know, if you listen, we try to explain that to them, like, don't ever touch your annuity. That's like your ace in the hole. That's going to help you retire, get out earlier. But you need people like Bill and other investors and credit unions to explain that, and they don't have an awareness of that, and that is a problem with the young men and women coming into the trades. And all of a sudden it's this much money. And then all of a sudden you're at a little law. And now you've got yourself in over your head. And it happens all the time. And, you know, it needs to, I don't know how to even explain it to them. They all seem like there's just some that, you know, hey, that's hot. Don't touch it. You'll get burnt. They touch it anyway.
Yeah.
Bill, talk about that, because that, by the way, that's an example you've given on previous Zooms where, and I can tell you, when that job ends, okay, and all of a sudden, you know, you're over your head. You know, talk about that, number one, and then let's talk about somebody who's going through something like that and repairing their situation. But talk about that situation and how you would educate young people, a group of apprentices who, like Bill said, or like Shawn said, you know, they got that money and they make some of them fundamental mistakes and find themselves with a mortgage over their head, and all of a sudden there's a work stoppage.
Yeah, and look, Shawn brought up an example of something that probably happens thousands of times over around the country, particularly when some of these young folks get brought into unions and get that first apprentice job. And as Shawn said, up there in Homer City, folks are living good, and they don't realize that sometimes rainy days are on the horizon, right? And things happen with jobs. And, I remember reading at one point that our brains don't really fully form into sort of the mature way of thinking until our mid-20s. And so it's not a surprise that Shawn talked about,
it's your 60s. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. And, and so it's no wonder that, some of these young folks, they get that money is burning a hole in their pocket, and that new truck, that jet ski, that house, that whatever, they're just dying for that. And this is what I love about your show, JDoc, is early intervention, financial education, the opportunity to present things in a way that people can understand it, where it makes sense in their lives. I'm not talking about folks on Wall Street. I'm talking about regular folks just like us, that let's present the information to them in a way that resonates with their daily life and their experiences,
It's interesting because, and Shawn, when you were talking, it reminds me of sometimes you need another voice, right? So you're busy, and our labor leaders are procuring work and talking about A, B, C, and D. Now all of a sudden, you're up there telling them how to save their money, and they're going, okay, I got my job, that's enough, I'm going to roll. But one of the topics that we're talking about today, is preparing for the tough times.
Yeah.
So, having said that, and I think this is an important thing, and at least educating somebody so they understand that there's a way, but what are some of the ways that a person can prepare financially for the slower periods in industry? What advice would you give, to our apprentices, Bill, to prepare for that? Because God knows I never thought about it.
Yeah. Look, I would, in front of those audiences, I often say, look, this is a situation where slow and steady wins the race. Financial success and the accumulation of assets over your life, of financial assets over your life, is a long-term project. And it starts early on with the idea of building credit and understanding the proper use of credit. When is taking on debt? When is taking on a loan? When is that a good idea? And when is it a bad idea? Shawn alluded to, so many of these young folks, they have access to amazing retirement plans, those annuities. As Shawn said, set it and forget it. Don't even look at it, because that is your opportunity to save for your later years. But between the time you're an apprentice and the time you're ready to retire, you've got, in many cases, decades and decades. And it is the habits that you learn, the financial habits that you learn early on in life, that pay dividends. And so, for example, JDoc, we've talked a lot about credit in some of the prior shows. Look, credit is not bad. Credit is not bad. It is a tool. And like any tool that our skilled trades use, you've got to learn to use it right, because if you don't use it right, you wind up hurting yourself. And that's where we come in. That's where financial service companies, credit unions like us come in, because we can help support folks like Shawn and their teams in educating their young laborers.
It's interesting. And Shawn, I'll say that when we were young, my wife and I, okay, we had these things that came in the mail called credit cards, right? And so there was like free money. We were just, I was a young iron worker, and she fell in love with them, and I fell in love with something called the minimum monthly payment, right? Which is a recipe for absolute disaster. And so when you talk, you don't normally hear on the job site around the water cooler or at coffee time those discussions going. How often do you think that conversation, especially for young people, just kind of finding their way? How often do you think that we don't have that conversation when we should? And I'll ask Shawn that.
Let me tell you, around the water cooler on a job site, nobody's talking about finances, okay? They're talking about how much money they're making this week and what they're going to buy, okay? That's why they say building trades labor works hard, spend hard, and play hard. Okay, and that's what you got to get them to live within their means. Don't live with the money you're making on that job. Okay, and just like Bill alluded to, it happens all the time. Hey, I'm making big money right now. I'm going to go get this UTV. I'm going to go get a new truck. I'm going to go buy this house. Next thing you know, that job's over. Now they got these payments that are through the roof, and they're back to reality, going on other jobs or looking for a job, because we all know it's a roller coaster. It's up and down in construction. Okay. It only takes a few months to get behind, and then you're in trouble. Now they're coming back and taking that truck. They're taking that UTV. So I kind of tell them, like, if they ask me, I'm like, hey, save your money, buy it cash, buy that UTV or four-wheeler cash. But really, I would say save it and live within your means. And, I hate to use that unemployment thing, because that unemployment is just a bridge to the next job. But kind of set yourself up that you basically can survive when you're collecting unemployment and make your bills. And then you save in between. And you might have to dip into your savings from that job to maybe, go do something. Everybody wants to go on vacation or do something like that. And there is no vacation days in the building trades. There's no sick days. So you have to have that fund set aside. You have to have your money invested. You got to set, like Bill, set annuity, never touch it. But, sometimes it's like talking to, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
And
Bill,
Bill, talk about some of the biggest mistakes, but then also let's talk about, the ways, setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, let me add in just a startling statistic that I think your listeners are going to appreciate. 56% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency expense if that happens today. 56% can't cover that $1,000 expense. And so Shawn alluded to this. Sometimes the jobs end. Yeah, and so that's why we're so deliberate in when we're out there in front of folks talking about, look, try to save 3 to 6 months worth of your living expenses, right? Have that money put aside, because we know at some point, perhaps jobs end, or perhaps you're going to encounter an unexpected expense, and you want to have that money available to you. And then, it's not that, look, each of us is unique. Each of us is an individual. But when you work for a credit union as large as Citadel, you start to see patterns. And here are some of the patterns. When you're in your early 20s to your mid-20s, that's your opportunity to start putting aside money, developing a credit file, developing your credit score, and being smart about where you're spending. That is the time where you need to learn how to budget the money you have. Because JDoc, you alluded to your wife, and I know some of on our shows you talked about your life is, because at some point most folks are going to get married, they're going to have kids, they're going to buy a house, and then you're in it, and then you've got responsibility and you've got financial obligations. And so in your 20s is when you can establish that credit. And what I would say to people is, look, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. There's a lot of folks out there trying to sell our young folks on credit cards. And I think you want to find a partnership with a financial services company that's looking out for your best interest, that gives you a line of credit that you can afford, with interest and terms that are fair. And I'm delighted to say at Citadel, as a credit union, our interest rates are capped, as are all credit unions. So we're capped. So people should recognize that a lot of our credit products are not going to hurt consumers. But man, like I said, it's fuel, and you just got to be careful how you use that fuel. But learning budgeting early on is the most important.
And when you talk about credit cards, one of the things we didn't get when we were kids, because we were overlapping cards, like we would pay this off with another card, but eventually, and I've seen this where interest rates go skies through the roof after the first amount of time, and now all of a sudden you are so over your head. I listen, we needed credit counseling. I had to 35 years ago, but it was an education that I saw firsthand. It was devastating as you can possibly get.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about credit repair, Bill, for people who have already made those mistakes, and how can they get, especially our labor guys, because now they're going to work every day with added pressure, and the last thing they should be doing is thinking about, their credit score and their devastating financial situation when they're in a refinery with danger everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, Shawn talked about this idea of the water cooler. Look, people do get into financial trouble and people make mistakes, and sometimes that can be embarrassing. And I think what people need to realize is they can ask for help, because people like credit unions, like our union leadership, they're there to help. And I know it's embarrassing, but just because you've made a financial mistake, like a credit issue earlier on in your life, that doesn't have to be terminal. You don't have to carry that through your whole life. And so there are ways for us to work with individual laborers, individual borrowers, to start to repair their credit history so they get back on the good side of banks and credit unions and other lenders, so that they are treated fairly, favorably, and get competitive offers. But I think folks have to realize that they're not the only ones. We've all been through this. And that's why I'm so grateful that you always talk about this openly, JDoc, is because, yeah, a lot of people do make mistakes, but, we can get in there and help folks.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't think a lot of people understand credit and the importance of credit and how ignoring, obviously, and getting yourself a real low score. Talk about educating our workforce on credit, the benefits of it, and the issues with it if you don't pay attention to it.
Yeah, and I think it starts with understanding from a credit union or a bank standpoint, how is it that we decide how to underwrite credit? What do we look at? We look at cash flow. We look at the assets that you have. We look at the length of time that you're in your current job. Yes, of course, we're going to ask you questions about your pay statement. And so you have that weekly pay stub and you think, well, I'm doing great. We look a little bit longer at your history to try to make informed decisions about what the right level of credit is for you, or what the right credit product is. But almost always in the journey of particularly our apprentices, it follows a certain pattern. Credit cards, auto lending, perhaps some department store cards is generally the pattern. And we need to help people understand that just because someone offers you a credit doesn't mean you need to accept it, and you have to use it wisely.
And how it impacts your talk about that,
Yeah.
how your credit score impacts your everyday life.
Yeah, for your listeners, sometimes I think on our show here, JDoc, it seems like we're talking out of both sides of our mouth. Your credit score improves as you take on additional credit products and you pay it back on a timely basis and you use it wisely. Your credit score decreases when you take on additional credit products, and then you wind up, as you described, late payments, late fees. You're transferring balances back and forth like it's some sort of a shell game. And so they have to be in balance. But for the folks out there that are holding any credit product, it is that monthly routine payment of your credit that helps to improve your credit profile. And as you alluded to, don't just settle for the minimum payment. Don't fall into that trap. Skip the extra Starbucks, skip the extra lottery ticket, whatever it takes. Make more than a minimum payment.
Well, talk about the benefits of good credit and the damages of and what you can't do with bad credit.
Yeah, good credit is like good customer pricing at your local store. When you have really good credit, you get lower interest rates. So your cost to borrow is less. When you have really good credit, you get offered credit products that have other additional rewards that could appeal to your lifestyle, cash back on your purchases or airline miles or, you name it. But what it also does is it affects your emotional well-being when you have a good credit score, because you know that you will have the confidence, no matter what situation you enter, that that lender is going to say yes. And that, you know, when you start looking for a house, or you start looking for an apartment, or you start looking for a car, you can hold your head up, not knowing that you're in a good bargaining position, that you're not going to be the victim of somebody, that you're actually in the driver's seat in that
and
discussion.
your interest rates are impacted by your credit score. So
that's exactly right. And the lower your interest rate is, the lower your cost of borrowing is, the shorter your term often is for how fast you can pay it back. It really pays dividends.
Shawn, we only have about a minute and a half left. I'd like you to comment on it and the importance of obviously educating our young people, and by the way, our not so young people.
So, hey, it was good hearing from Bill and meeting him today. Everything you said was spot on. And in closing for me on the show today, I appreciate Bill's advice here today. But to the listeners out there, listen, future's bright right now, building trades union work, okay? I don't care if you got an R or a D or an I in front of your name. The Boilermakers are taking the challenge to build out this infrastructure tomorrow for the state of Pennsylvania and the country. And I think all of us in the building trades feel the same way. And energy shouldn't be political. It's something that every one of us needs, and we're all relied on. And the future, like I said, is looking bright. Every one of us are taking new apprentices right now. If you're interested in the trade unions and you're hearing me, come on down, get on all of our websites, start a career, not just a job. We're ready to take you.
Awesome. And Bill, if you will, on financial literacy for our labor community, if you will, last word.
Yeah, look, it's a pleasure to be with Shawn, the Boilermakers, 154. As you said earlier in the show, look, credit unions like Citadel, your local credit union, we're out there available to help. Just please extend your hand and invite us into some of your meetings. And we promise it's not about self-dealing. It's about helping you, union leadership, and it's about helping your members.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. Obviously, want to thank Krausey, for being my partner, but also our guest, Shawn Steffee, business agent, Boilermakers Local 154, and of course, Bill Brown, President, CEO, Citadel Credit Union, for what you do for our labor community. On behalf of everybody on the panel, I'm JDoc. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Consider a career with the International Brotherhood of Boilermakers. As a Boilermaker apprentice, you'll earn while you learn. We offer excellent wages and benefits. And as part of our no-cost hands-on apprenticeship program, you'll learn from the best in state-of-the-art training centers and on the job. Become a union Boilermaker and get on your way to a great career.
Visit Boilermakers.org or call 844-IBB-WELD.